Hello once again, this is SavageTechman, aka Ed, and joining me on this episode of the Geek Homeworld, we're talking about Spider-Man Homecoming, and Cheryl is here.
Woohoo!
Welcome. Well, we're just going to dive right into it. First off, overall impressions.
Well, first off, I think you need to say this is the spoiler-free review
Thank you.
of Spider-Man. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can listen to this and you still will be able to go see the movie without knowing any of the important plot stuff or all the Easter eggs and special things that Marvel likes to throw into a film. We won't talk about that today.
We won't. We already have that episode in the can for next week. So we've got a special guest for that one, too. So there's a little teaser for next week. So we're going to just jump right into it here. How well do you think that the current Spider-Man Homecoming movie falls into the Marvel universe? We're going to talk about that.
I mean, I think there's some chronology problems that stuck out to me immediately, and I think there's some commentary out there about that. But, you know, if you let go of the math, everything's cool.
And it's much better than any chronology of DC.
Yeah.
We're not even going to touch that right now.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, Marvel Cinematic Universe is so much above DC's. We don't even need to talk about them together today. But, you know, in terms of other things with how it fits into the universe, for me, it's a fun break from the intensity of some of the films and the way some of them have gone. Especially after Civil War. Yeah, I mean, Civil War is pretty intense. Now, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy, which isn't part of the Avengers universe yet, I guess, that it's fun. This is fun, too, but in a breezier, lighter way, even than Guardians. Yeah,
Guardians definitely brings the humor to the Marvel Universe, and Spider-Man Homecoming was just solid through and through, and it was believable. Tom Holland's performance in it, Robert Downey Jr., it did great jobs with that.
Well, and in terms of the overall storyline of the Avengers movie arcs,
right.
So all the things that are feeding into and out of that, you know, one of the things I like about the way that Marvel does this, and I said I wasn't going to talk about DC, but I guess I am. DC sort of ties everything together like you're building a railroad and you have to have a big spike and you're going to hammer that spike in with a giant sledgehammer to make it come together. Whereas Marvel is just much more deft and light-handed with it. You see things happening in this film.
Easter eggs all over the place.
Well, and not just Easter eggs. I mean, part of the entire plot of this film actually ties into
Civil War.
You come to realize ties into Civil War, ties into...
And actually...
into Avengers Infinity Wars. It's getting, you know, it's moving us in that direction still without being like, now we're moving towards the next film. Right. Pay attention. This is where it's happening.
Well, it ties it into the original Avengers even. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, well, I mean, there's definitely ways in which it does that very intentionally, but otherwise it's just very smooth in the way that it handles that.
I'm so glad that Spider-Man is back on the big screen and I'm glad we didn't get an origin story here.
Well, and that's the thing is, in some ways, this is a bit of a different Spider-Man than some people. And so there are people who are not going to be happy about some of the changes they take. But I think this is this is like one of the oldest, most popular superheroes. And maybe it does need a little bit of freshening.
And we don't know in the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, which I'm sure they're going to do, they could go back, certainly. And, you know, we explore that on our next episode.
It's scheduled for 2 years from now. And so maybe we will get that flashback to the origin. So the origin here is just, isn't really origin, I think. It's just a continuation of what happened after Civil War to this character, Spider-Man. So this is kind of like his training period, I guess, to get him ready for whatever's going to come next.
Well, Infinity Wars is what's coming next in 2018, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't show the Thor Ragnarok trailer.
You know, I was really surprised about that, too. You know, really glad to see the Apes trailer for next week. Yay.
War for the Planet of the Apes.
Can't wait for Apes. You know,
we cannot wait.
For goodness sake, there's Oscar talk for Andy Serkis to get an Oscar nomination for a motion capture character, that would be pretty
a first. That would be historic.
amazing. So yeah, glad to see that.
And he's also in. He's going to be in the Black Panther movie, and he was in Age of Ultron.
Is he going to be in Black Panther?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm pretty sure.
Reason to see Black Panther, as if there aren't already enough reasons.
He has
but really surprising that the Thor Ragnarok trailer is out there, and we've seen it with several other films, but we didn't see it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not playing at other theaters besides the one, because we've only seen it one time so far. And
well, that's the next big push, I think, for Marvel, obviously, is to start promoting or keep promoting Thor Ragnarok, and that's going to be a very pivotal movie.
Coming out in November of this year.
Correct.
And then next year, there's like, we're going to continue this sort of 3 Marvel movies a year, I guess, with Black Panther in February. And then, gosh, he did such a great job in Civil War as well.
Yes.
And then, of course, Infinity War, which I guess that storyline is actually being broken between 2 films.
It is.
So the May 2018 release will be the first part of the story. They haven't announced a title for the second part, but that's going to be May 2019. And then in between there, you're going to have Ant-Man and the Wasp in July of 18, Captain Marvel in March of 2019. We know
Which, go ahead.
Well, and we know there's a Guardians 3 coming, but I don't think we have a date on that yet.
Exactly. When we look at the films, we look at a lot of different aspects of it. We're talking about the production design of Spider-Man Homecoming, the music, practical, special effects, the action sequences, the 3D.
Well, and this is really, I think a lot of people are calling this a street level film versus like what we get in Thor when we're moving between these sort of spheres like we did in Dark World. When we're in Guardians and we're on different planets all over the place.
Right.
This is a kid in his high school in New York,
He's got real problems.
And there's not, and his real problems are happening in his neighborhood. And so this is, the realness of this film is apparent, So the production design of this is how do we fit Spider-Man into the real world, and I think they've done a great job of that. But you don't necessarily look for the kind of scenic design that you see in many of the other Marvel films. You're not going to get that here.
For me, at first, the movements did seem kind of CGI when Spider-Man was moving at such great speeds and doing some of his acrobatic stuff. But after a while, I let that go, and I'm like, that's how it would probably look in real life anyway.
If he was really doing that backflip.
If you were really doing that, I try to put myself in his place.
Yeah, there were a couple of points where it's like, oh, but I mean, he's a superhero. This is supernatural, I guess. Right. And in terms of, 3D, which I usually don't like, we did see this in 3D. I thought there was nothing in it that disturbed me, and that's what often I object to with 3D, is that it pulls me out of the story, that I'm more aware of the fact that it's 3D than the
somebody
film
poking
itself.
you in the eye with, something.
Or just it's jarring and there's something happening somewhere on the screen that's pulling me away from what I really should be looking at. I was so engaged in this film that I didn't even notice until halfway through the film that 2 people have walked in and sat down in front of me. And like after an action sequence, I noticed them for the first time and thought, oh my God, where did they come from? Like literally somebody could have come in and attacked me and I wouldn't even noticed it, because I just thought visually engaged in the story, all of that. And, it's pretty amazing. Of course, a lot of people have writing credits on this film, including the director, and of course, including Stan Lee, who does his usual thing. But John Watts, who directs the film, he did a lot of stuff with The Onion, and he's got a sort of very eclectic background. Nothing really big though. So he did 2015. What was it? Cop Car with Kevin Bacon. Like that's the biggest thing he's done so far. So this is pretty big. It's just like Wonder Woman and the director there. You pull somebody who hasn't done much and you give them this really kind of potentially big film. And I think
Patty Jenkins knocked it out of the park. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of people are saying John Watts, and he's in there with his usual writing team, that they're really good at this kind of, again, I don't want to say pedestrian, but like everyday life.
Right.
Kinds of, they make it sparkle. Here's a kid going through. And so one of the criticisms that I've heard is people saying it's too childish.
I I actually think more than probably any of the movies other than Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2, which is still my favorite, I really feel like this fits in very well. And this is probably the best interpretation with Tom Holland being closer. I think he's 21.
He's 21 now. I'm guessing he would have been 19 when he was filming this.
Yeah. When he's filming, so he's
when he filmed
closer
Civil War.
than Tobey Maguire, who was like around 27 when they filmed Spider-Man, the Spider-Man trilogy there. Or at least starting out with Spider-Man 1. But Tom Holland brings that youthfulness that I think is, for all other characters, is needed in Peter Parker.
Well, not just youthfulness, not just young, but adolescence.
Adolescence, there's awkwardness, which we all have gone through or are going through.
One of the reviews I read said, he doesn't have time for esoteric thoughts or whatever. Right. He's adolescence and hormones are enough to deal with.
Right.
And then on top of this, he's got these superpowers, and he's connected to this bigger thing that nobody knows anything about. And it's kind of it kind of is one of the things that I think has been appealing about Spider-Man across the decades is he more than almost any of the other is a true everyday guy, and not only that, but an adolescent, and so
he's a kid.
If you can identify with one of these superheroes when you're a young person reading the comics or watching the old TV shows or whatever, this is the guy like, oh yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and the interaction with Happy in the movie is hilarious.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm always glad to see nerds triumph too,
Yeah, oh, definitely. Well, the critics, like the Wall Street Journal, say that this is pleasantly fresh.
Well, and I think that's it. NPR even says if you're going to be as fizzy and funny and warm-hearted as this, then keep them coming.
Rolling Stone Newsflash says Tom Holland is the best movie Spider-Man ever. He finds the kid inside the famous red onesie and brings out the kid in even the most hardened film goer.
I've seen people criticizing Holland's performance. I think
he fit the role perfectly.
I just feel like you can identify.
Totally.
I don't know. Maybe not everybody was as awkward as we were as teenagers.
Yeah, I was awkward. I'm still awkward.
Maybe the jocks out there can't identify with what this kid is going through. But I just feel like I can so identify. Like, you wish that you could have been as brave as Tom Holland Spider-Man is in the face of everything that he's coping with.
Right.
You wish that you could have been as daring and as stick to it as he is,
The Express says he's a recognizable kid struggling with identity issues on an exaggerated scale.
Yeah, a little bit exaggerated. When I get out of school, I like to hop across buildings.
Yeah, we've all watched that clock, even in our jobs, and everything. So let's switch gears and talk about Tony Stark's character.
This is very interesting because this is, as it turns out, a pivotal, that's not a word,
It's a pivotal
development for Tony Stark. He faced so much in Iron Man 1 that he overcomes and he starts to realize he's been living his life wrong. And then he goes through all this angst and depression and everything through all of the Avengers and then through Iron Man.
Well, from the trailer,
3.
He said, Tom Holland says, Peter Parker, he says, I was just trying to impress you. I was trying to be like you. And Tony Stark says, I wanted you to be better.
Is that a spoiler?
That's not a spoiler. That's in the trailer.
Okay, just saying. You got to be careful.
And that's when he takes the seat
But I think,
back.
Iron Man went through so much in Iron Man 3. I mean, frankly, we all went through a lot with that. I did not care for that film at all. But this is him finally growing up. I think we can safely say.
Right.
And his relationship with Peter Parker gives him the opportunity to be someone he hasn't been before.
That's a very good point. And from that, having Tony Stark in the movie and having the role that he has, I think really enhances it.
Tony Stark's the actor's name is Robert Downey Jr., right?
There's no difference. They're one and the same, trust me. Any other Tony Stark would be different.
That's true.
We have Aunt May.
Again, a fresh take on a traditional beloved character. she's just fun. And for the people who are our age, of course, we
Marissa Tomei,
remember Marissa Tomei from so many fun things,
especially My
her
Cousin Vinny
Oscar-winning performance in My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah.
And so you get that same kind of like, she's beautiful without, what is that song? You don't know you're beautiful or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, she's beautiful without really knowing it. She doesn't wear it on her sleeve. She's smart. Obviously, she's Peter Parker's aunt, and so she takes care of him. But, and she does get, I think, one of the best lines in the movie. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. We wouldn't say it on this podcast anyway. We'd have to, bleep it, but you'll know once you see it.
But she's terrific. Well, and then, another really great performance is I was going to say Tobey Maguire.
That would be interesting.
Peter Parker's sidekick, Ned. Oh, wow. This kid, I'm not sure if you say Jacob Batalon or Batalon, or I'm not sure how to say his last name, but wow, he is just really, and again, he has captured the awkwardness of the really smart, geeky kid and everything that he wants to do. So I loved him.
Oh, he's wonderful as the guy in the chair. We have Liz, question mark on serious relationship.
Well, I don't, some people think about these sort of classic relationships that Spider-Man has. And in this movie, he's 15 years old. So what are you expecting?
Yeah. You can't expect like lifelong love to last.
This is a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
He's more worried about what's going to happen in the next hour than he is about what's going to happen a year from now.
I was more interested in Michelle's character,
who's played by Zendaya in the film,
and the future that holds. And I can't say anything else about her because it's spoiler.
Even if there were no future hinted at for that character, which may be a spoiler.
If we go any farther, it's a spoiler.
Further would be, but just the character of Michelle, who's one of his classmates. Wow.
I love her attitude.
I didn't know a kid with as much attitude as her, and I'm glad I didn't, because I don't know if I would have gone home crying every day thinking that she hated me. I don't think she hates Peter, but she could certainly feel like she did.
She's probably playing like she does.
She's really complex, really smart, really awesome. And then we've got a sort of classic. Somebody said this fits in with the John Huston films of the 1980s, and so you got sort of the classic bully in here.
Yeah.
He's not bully in the way Karate Kid's bully is.
They were all they were the true 80s, not how it's retro now, but when the actual 80s were the 80s and we lived through the 80s. Yeah, they were these pretty blondes, and everybody was beautiful.
This bully doesn't fit into the pretty blonde category.
No, not at all. I love the diversity.
He gets
of this
the payback.
Cast.
Yeah, a lot of diversity, and
love it.
I don't know if we're just more used to seeing that now, so it doesn't stick out. So yay, we've made this progress.
It's not like Fantastic Four where people were so some people were so shocked at the casting on that. I think we've evolved as a culture where we can accept different people in different roles. Remember, these comic books were written in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and whatever, the years were. And so there were different times, and times you have to evolve, you have to be more inclusive, and it works.
This cast feels natural to me. It feels like
totally natural.
It feels like these kids would be in each other's world today, doing the things that they're doing. It feels like a real world film with some unusual things happening.
We've got, the Jon Favreau, and there's some surprise appearances we can't talk about.
And of course, with Marvel, always stay. Please, stay through the credits. Please stay. Like, literally, you will think there's nothing left.
Yeah. One of the funniest post-credit scenes ever.
All the way to the end.
You'll know what it is when you see it.
Only if you stay.
And the character playing it is trying not to
I don't think so. I think it's part of the whole thing, but it ties into what's come earlier in the film as well. So definitely stay. It's a Marvel movie, so you must stay all the way to the end.
And Spider-Man, will see him again in Infinity Wars. Yes. Infinity War. And then we'll see him July 19th in the follow-up to Spider-Man.
So what do you think? We always like to talk about with these summer films. Is this the best film of the summer so far?
For me, especially after seeing Transformers.
I I didn't subject myself to that.
I wish I wouldn't have. There's an episode about that. You want to listen to it. It was funnier than Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was funny. This could possibly be, it's definitely in my top 5 of the summer. So it possibly could be number 1. I don't want to say that now, but...
Well, that's what, I'm kind of hesitant because
we had a situation with Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
we loved Wonder Woman.
Went to see it again, and the things that bothered us that I remember we talked about in the spoiler-free review... When we saw it again, they really bothered me. The things that bothered me really bothered me, and I'm glad that I said, no, I'm not going to say Wonder Woman is my best film of the summer. I'm going to stick with Guardians. So right now I'm hesitant. I've only seen Spider-Man Homecoming once.
Right.
So I feel like I need to see it one more time.
But I felt
to say that it's going to go over Guardians, but I'm feeling like it could dethrone Guardians for me. But of course, I'm looking forward to Andy Serkis next week in Apes.
Oh my gosh, that could just change the whole game.
I'm hoping it doesn't break my heart. I hope it lives up to my expectations.
And then there's The Last Jedi at the end of the year, and Thor.
That doesn't count as a summer film.
That's true. And or even technically Thor film. Wouldn't either.
But I think in terms of this film, if you go back, one of my favorite things to do is watch Honest Trailers. And the Honest Trailers review of Captain America the Winter Soldier said, okay, let's just admit it. This is pretty much a perfect film.
We have to be nitpicky now to find something.
We have something to make fun of.
Yeah.
I think that's the case with this film. I really do.
That's a very good comparison. I would have to agree with you. There's that was what I was going to say is that I felt with Spider-Man Homecoming versus when I watched Guardians or I watched Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman I thought was just about perfect. But then on the second watch, I found flaws in it. Still love it, though. Still one of the best. But Spider-Man Homecoming just felt cohesive. It felt like a good story that just followed by the lines, went outside the lines, but it all made sense, and there was a cohesion to it. And I totally dug it.
Well, one of the other things that I really love about this film is that, when I review movies on here, you'll often hear me say that I think it's just too dark. It's just too intense. And in Spider-Man's case, this is a really good film. It has really good action sequences. I don't think it's too long. There aren't any sequences that I would have cut out, as I often say, especially with DC movies. But it's not dark.
It's fun. It's not.
I don't walk
summer
away
movie.
Depressed.
Yeah, the world wasn't coming to end. That'll be Infinity Wars when everybody gets killed off, probably, and then I'll be in shambles. But Spider-Man Homecoming, go see it. Go see it again. I'm just already saying that.
In fact, I wanted to stay and watch the next showing.
You did say that.
But you made me skip dinner on the way, so that didn't happen.
I know. We had to go eat dinner and all that. But, there's still time left to go see it again because it's still in theaters for a while. So go out and see Spider-Man Homecoming, a great movie, great summer fun.